Hey, Lorehounds, and welcome back to Nerd Stuff and Things. Today, we're diving into the heart of Middle Earth's Second Age, the story of 20 Rings, a dark lord, and the catastrophic deception that nearly bound all of Middle Earth into eternal darkness. I'm talking about the Rings of Power. You know the rhyme. 3 for the Elven Kings, 7 for the Dwarf Lords, 9 for mortal men, and 1 for the Dark Lord. But who actually held these rings, and what specific powers did they grant? Let's break down the ones we know about factually, one by one. First, let's set the stage. All 19 of the lesser rings of power were forged by the elven smiths of Eregion, led by the greatest craftsman of the age, Celebrimbor. However, this work was done under the guidance of a charismatic figure calling himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Of course, this was Sauron in a beautiful disguise. Sauron's goal was simple: to dominate the minds of those who wore the other rings. The One Ring. Bearer Sauron the Dark Lord. Made by Sauron alone in the fires of Mount Doom, he poured a huge part of his own native power, his very will to dominate, into the ring. It is a plain, unadorned gold band inscribed with the ring verse in the black speech when heated. Its purpose is to rule and control the minds and wills of all who wore the other rings of power. It granted the wearer incredible power, an unnatural lifespan, invisibility, though to a mortal this was a step toward the spirit world. The longer it was worn, the more it corrupted the bearer. It was destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom by Frodo Baggins, causing Sauron's final defeat and rendering all the other rings of power inert. When Sauron first put on the One Ring, the elves realized instantly that they had been betrayed. Celebrimbor quickly hid the other rings, specifically the three, which Sauron had no hand in forging directly. The three Elven Rings were forged by Celebrimbor alone, without Sauron's direct touch. This meant while they still were bound to the One Ring and their power would fade if it was destroyed, Sauron could not fully dominate the minds of their wearers. They were made for preservation, healing, and warding off the decay of time. Narya, the Ring of Fire. It is a red stone, a ruby gem. Its primary bearers, Gil-galad, who passed it to Círdan the shipwright. Círdan later gave it to Gandalf upon his arrival in Middle-earth, recognizing that the wizard would have the greatest need of its power to inspire. Its key powers are to strengthen courage, fire hope in the hearts of others, and help its bearer resist weariness and despair. Ninya, the Ring of Adamant, or Water. It is made from mithril with a single white stone, likely a diamond. Its primary bearer is Galadriel, Lady of Lorien. She wore it openly only after the destruction of the One Ring. Preservation and protection from evil, specifically the power to create a ward against the passage of time and the intrusion of the outside world. Galadriel used it to maintain the timeless golden beauty Lothlorien. Vilya, the Ring of Air. It is made with a sapphire and was originally given to Gil-galad, the High King of Noldor, who entrusted it to Elrond, half-elven, for safekeeping. Its powers were considered to be the mightiest of the three. Like Ninya, it had powers of preservation, which Elrond used to sustain the beautiful hidden sanctuary of Rivendell. It also hinted to have some power over the elements, specifically water, which we see in the flooding of the Ford of Rivendell. The elves never used these rings for war or domination, but for healing and protecting their lands. Once the One Ring was destroyed, their power faded, and the elves knew their time in Middle-earth was ending. When Sauron attacked the elves, he eventually captured Celebrimbor and seized the 9 rings, which had been forged under his tutelage. These were the rings of mortal men. The 9 rings. The bearers are the great kings, sorcerers, and warriors of men. Only a few are ever named, notably the King of Agmar, the Witch King, and Kamul the Easterling. They granted great power, influence, and unnatural prolonged life. To the wearers, the rings brought invisibility in the world of the living, but drew them toward the spirit world. The 9 had Sauron's intended effect on men. Blinded by greed and lust for power, the wearers became utterly corrupted. Their immortality became a torment, and they eventually faded into the Wraith world, becoming eternally bound to the will of Sauron. They became the Nazgul, the Ring Wraiths, Sauron's most terrifying servants. With the destruction of the One Ring, the Nazgul were destroyed and their rings became powerless. 7 for the dwarves. Sauron managed to capture 7 of the rings, and he attempted to use them to enslave the dwarf lords. 7 kings of the dwarf clans. The first was given to Durin the Third of the Longbeards and Khazad-dûm. The ring later passed down to Théorin the Second, Thorin Oakenshield's father. The other 6 were distributed to the other 6 major dwarf clans. Unlike men, the dwarf lords proved highly resistant to being fully dominated or turned into wraiths, a sign of their stubborn, enduring nature. However, the rings magnified the dwarfs' natural greed for wealth and gold, causing them to amass great hoards of treasure and become possessive, leading to war and disaster. The accumulated wealth drew dragons, who destroyed 4 of the rings by consuming the dwarfs and their hoards. The other 3 were eventually retrieved by Sauron himself. By the time of the War of the Ring, all 7 were either destroyed or back in Sauron's possession. Every great theory needs great support, and buying a shirt is the absolute best way to keep the Nerd Stuff and Things research engine running. Our new line features exclusive designs based on some of our most popular videos. These are high quality, comfortable, and perfect for subtly signaling your membership in our lore community. The pre-order is the only time we guarantee all sizes will be available, and it ensures you get the first edition t-shirt print. Grab yours before the window closes and directly support the creation of our next lore video. And there you have it, the 20 Rings of Power, from the plain gold band of the Dark Lord that held the power to bind all others, to the 3 hidden jewels that preserved the last sanctuary of the elves. These rings were not just magical objects, they were central weapons in a spiritual war, tools of corruption designed to exploit the deepest desires of each race. Their story is a testament to Sauron's deceit, the endurance of the dwarves, the corruption of men, and the wisdom of elves who resisted the lure of ultimate power. What other elements of Middle Earth lore should we dive into next? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe for more nerd stuff and things. We'll see you next time.